Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us. Bunch of things to get through, so let's get started on this Friday morning. I'm here with Terry Austin. I'm so happy to have her because we're going to break down all the aspects of this case. First week down. Terry, let's start with the state. In your opinion, you had been talking to me throughout this case that, the defense has been raising some great points, but every once in a while, the prosecution is really coming forward with some great aspects, and we're starting to understand how they've built their case. So what is sticking out to you so far that really raises questions about whether or not Segura may have done this? I mean, let's start with the state. What do you think their strongest argument is?
I think they have two really strong arguments, Jesse. The first argument is the fact that Segura lied. He lied during the interrogation, and whenever you lie, it really makes a big difference with the jury. It affects your credibility. And the second thing is his demeanor, his affect. He just looks like he has no concern, no care. His children, or at least one of his children, has been killed. His girlfriend was killed. These other two girls who he said were like his children were killed. And he just doesn't seem affected by it at all. So those two things are going to work against him and in favor of the prosecution.
Now, the idea that, hey, he was hiding an affair, that's why he was so secretive. That's why he has this other phone that he's communicating with Peters. He wasn't even sure if Javante was really his son. He kind of thought Peters might have, was with someone else. I mean, does that steer you anyway? Because another way of looking at it is, even if this guy's having an affair and is trying to hide it, you're going to lie to police about that? What do you think?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you understand he doesn't want his wife to find out he's having this affair. He's accustomed to lying to her. He had multiple affairs over a long period of time. He's used to having this second phone. So those are good explanations. But here in the interview where you're looking at now, he's found out that these people have been murdered, and he's being questioned and interrogated by the police. You would think that he would understand, now you must tell the truth. It's one thing to lie to your wife. It's another thing to lie to the police when they're investigating such a horrendous crime. He's got to know it can come back and bite him. And in fact, it did. So don't lie.
Don't lie. We're going to get to that police interrogation tape later on. There's two that we're going to show you. But first, a little bit more of the prosecution with their opening statement from the beginning of the trial. Okay, so let's talk about that second phone. You find that odd, even for a guy who was having an affair and had multiple women? Is it weird to have a second phone in this kind of case?
I think it's very odd. I think if he were going to use another phone to cover up his extramarital affairs, he would get a burner phone instead of borrowing someone else's phone, because that is traceable and it's his friend, and eventually the police are going to find out that it was being used, and it's going to be able to digitally trace where in fact Segura was. So I think it's very odd that he's using a friend's phone, and he probably should have gotten a burner phone, either to hide his extramarital affairs, or if he indeed did this murder, it would have been smarter to use a phone that you cannot trace.
I wonder if that would have looked worse, in that kind of scenario. Here's another thing. The idea of, and that, though, by the way, cell phone data is what ultimately tracks him into the area, and then the defense has to explain away and says, well, he went to her house that night, had sex with her, but then left. That's when she and the kids were murdered. The idea of motive here, okay? So motive, not an element of a crime. We always talk about that. State doesn't have to prove it. Helps tell a story, helps explain why a man would commit a quadruple homicide here. The idea of back child support payments. Strong motive, weak motive, and if you think it's a weak motive, should the state have even said anything?
I do think it's a weak motive, Jesse, and you're right. I think people always confuse motive with intent, and for premeditated, you have to show that there's intent to kill here and that he was planning to kill. For a motive, you don't need to show that there's any motive, and a child support motive, I think, is relatively weak. Obviously, money is often the motive behind many murders, but he, as we know, already was paying child support, or ordered to pay child support, to his wife. And so now he has this girlfriend who he also has to pay child support. It really is not a motive here for wanting to kill her two daughters that he raised, and his son with her. So I don't think it's a very strong motive by the prosecution here.
All right, more to discuss, more to analyze. Week one is done. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back.